All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Tactical Walls Best Defense Podcast, Episode 2. We are really excited to have Rich Graham from Full Spectrum Warrior here with us. Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So just kind of introduce yourself. Tell us a little about who you are, where you came from, what got you started down this path, all that good stuff.
So my name's Rich Graham, veteran SEAL. I started off obviously in the military, and then my time in the military got cut short due to a medical complication. It's a long story, but essentially after 6 years, I wasn't able to deploy as a SEAL anymore, and had some major surgeries and stuff like that. I got pushed out of the Navy. Moved back to my hometown in New Jersey. Was trying to figure some things out, what I was going to do. I started personal training and teaching martial arts while I was trying to get back on my feet. And some of the people that I was training there at the gym and at the Thai boxing gym were police officers, and they had kind of asked me to come out. They're like, "Oh, Rich, you were a sniper in the teams. Our police sniper course is going on. Can you come out and just watch what's going on and maybe give us a couple tips or pointers?" So I did that, and that was just for fun, just to help out. And then that turned into, "Hey, man, can you come back and train our SWAT guys?" And, so for a while I was going and doing that just for fun because I was personal training at that point full time while I was in that transition process. And long story short, over the years, it just developed more into doing more and more of the firearms training, more of the security consulting and things like that, which then started leading me down into Central and South America, over doing stuff in Europe and, across the country. And then at one point, about 5-6 years ago, I was like, dude, why don't I just do this full time and treat it like a real business? And that's where we kind of made the transition. And then now, as I've been traveling all over the country and working with all these people, we decided to start developing an online training academy, our Full Spectrum Warrior program. And basically, so when we travel, we can now tie people into this online training so they can continue to develop themselves. And now we're bringing in other coaches and things like that who might have a different take or view on it than mine, but everyone ties into the same philosophy. The big picture is the same, but everyone's got a different approach on how to get there. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where we're at now.
Nice. Really bringing a well-rounded view to the world of training.
Yep.
Very cool. I know you focus a lot on fitness, mobility, etc. Talk to me a little bit about that. What does that, mean to you? What should people consider at home?
Well, fitness, mobility, strength, all that stuff is obviously really important. And I'm a small guy, so I'm 165 pounds. I went through the SEAL training at like 145 pounds. I've always been small, but growing up, even though I was small, being a Thai boxer all through high school, it was one of those things where it's like, okay, well, if I can't get jacked, then I might as well be able to fight. You know what I mean? And one of the things that came with that was, being a fighter, Thai boxing was probably one of the most, strenuous, strength and conditioning programs that I've gone through was training to be a fighter. And I found there was a lot of things that correlated between training to be a fighter and then going into the military. And it really set me in a good position, even though I wasn't like, a super long distance swimmer, or really big long distance runner, or whatever like that. The training that I was doing to be a fighter really helped me with the conditioning that I needed for the military. But with that, there's a lot to be said. Many times, especially when we're talking about personal security and all this kind of stuff, I feel like there's a lot of people who get a gun and they want to conceal carry, and they put so much emphasis on the firearm as being the thing that's going to save them, right? Which is only a tool, right? That they start to build up a false expectation, in my opinion. And a lot of times we'll hear like, "Oh yeah, well, if someone tries that with me, I'll just shoot them." And it's like, okay, well, maybe you would, maybe. But if you look at the difference between the altercations that we do in the military where, you know, there's a small group of people in the military who address threats at very close proximity inside rooms doing like building clearings. But for the most part, most of the fights are in long distance. You know, when I say long distance, that could be 3 blocks away.
Right.
But the engagements are not like right there up close and personal. And where this differs from the civilian world is, if I'm going to attack you, there's something that I want. So if I'm going to just attack you randomly on the street, maybe I want your wallet, maybe I want your watch, maybe, you know, someone's a sexual, deviant, and they're going to do something bad to you in that regards. But either way, they need to get close to you. Like, most people aren't, you know, shooting people or mugging people from 300 yards away. There's no point in it. I don't shoot you from 300 yards away to then walk 300 yards to get your wallet. So many of the times you see these attacks in the gas stations, the convenience stores, you know, on the side of the street, and it's really up close and personal, and people don't have the reaction time to pull a gun out on the initial attack. So in many cases, you see a brief fight, and then there's a break in contact and there's space given, or they draw their gun in the middle of the fight. So the strength and the fitness become a big part of our full spectrum warrior training philosophy, because the ability to fight and the ability to move and generate power supports the weapon system. You know what I mean? Like, that should come first as a foundation, and then the gun is a value add. Your knife is a value add. It's an upgrade to your ability to fight. But many times we find that people get the weapon and then maybe they put a foundation behind it. Our approach is, you know, even though our clients usually come to us for the firearms training first, but we like to really emphasize the importance of having the ability to move, to generate power or force, and have some endurance with that. And again, mobility and range of motion can help us, you know, get in and out of a vehicle fast, to not get injured as easily, to be able to get into different positions, to utilize cover, concealment, or just have more range of motion for fighting in general. So it basically comes back on itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think you're absolutely right. A lot of people get gun, knife, flashlight, whatever, all the things we carry on our belts and in our pockets, and it becomes like a magic talisman. Like, suddenly you're just safe from everything because you have those magic tools. But yeah, without the knowledge, without the physical ability and all of that to back it up, they're only slightly helpful. They're still force multipliers, but without over direction, they're not that helpful. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I think you're also right. It's usually blitz attacks up close in just, you know, everyday life. So if you're not working in that context, you're probably missing out.
Because I mean, the reality of it is we do a lot of the training with the buzzers, and that's good, like racing the clock, and that's good for developing skills and developing the muscle memory to make the appropriate movements for a concealed carry draw. But in the reality of it, when you're arguing with someone in a parking lot, like, if they haven't showed a weapon or done anything yet, like, are you really going to draw a gun on someone because they catcalled your wife in the parking lot? Like, now you're going to go to jail for brandishing a weapon. So normally there has to be something that initiates an attack for you to be able to utilize drawing your gun at that distance so many times. Or if you're in a bar or something like that, legally, you're not supposed to be carrying your gun in a bar. So if you're in those kind of situations where, you know, many times now there's a lot of areas where we're not allowed to carry a firearm. So now what? So now you go back to, well, now I'm completely vulnerable because I put all of my, my entire defense strategy was all based around the firearm and not based around what my capability is. And then, oh, when it's appropriate, I can upgrade this capability because I have a projectile. You know what I mean?
Yep. And you relatively recently just came out with a book with basically a whole fitness system, didn't you?
Yeah, actually, I put together that fitness system back in 2009, and it's just it's been there. We're just rebranding it, not rebranding it, but we're just bringing it back to the spotlight again as we launch the Full Spectrum Warrior training website. So we have our Trident Fitness kettlebell program. and that was my personal training company. You know, when I came out of the Navy, and but basically, it's a kettlebell training program that's designed not necessarily toward kettlebell competition or bodybuilding. It's more based on developing explosive strength, developing a very strong posture that then translates into martial arts combatives in our firearms training.
Nice. And where can people find that?
They can find it on fullspectrumwarrior.us. If for our members, it's a program that comes with their membership.
Gotcha. Let's talk about home defense for a minute. What are some simple things that you would recommend most people, implement just in their daily lives at home or anything like that?
Yeah, a couple. I mean, without getting like too deep into overall specifics, there's a couple myths out there. Like, a lot of times people worried about having their house broke into at night. And when the lights go out, it's like, it's scary. But the reality is the current method many times now, because people have alarms and all that stuff, a lot of the attacks don't actually happen at night. There are cases, I'm not going to say it won't happen at night, but there are cases. But many times where we drop our guard is during the daytime. You know what I mean? At nighttime, we lock all our doors. The neighborhood's quiet. Obviously, we're probably home, you know what I mean? And the kids are home, husband and wife are home, or maybe you live by yourself or whatever, but you get my point. Like, you come home at night unless you're on a crazy work schedule to go to sleep. So if someone's coming to rob your house, steal things or anything like that, a lot of times what we see now is people will do that during the daytime. Many times during the day, and I'm guilty of this as well, I'll be walking around doing stuff. I'm going in and out, and I leave the door unlocked because I'm coming in and out all day long. And, so a lot of times these robberies or the burglaries, right? The difference there is if they're going to try to assault you or not. A burglary would be there's no violence, or robbery is they're taking it from you under threat. So many of these will happen during the daytime, and we'll see a lot where people are, using moving vans, or, they'll disguise a car as, they're the cable guy or something like that, and they come up and they're walking up to the houses, knocking on the doors, and if no one comes to the door, they assume you're at work, and they'll come in and try to rob the house, or steal from the property while they hope you're not home. But many times, because the doors are unlocked, they might walk right into the house, and now you're confronted with someone in your home in the middle of the day, and you're kind of taken off guard. And almost questioning, well, what are you actually here for? And not actually accepting what's actually happening, as reality, because you weren't mentally prepared for this to happen in the daytime. So that's one of the things you want to watch out for. And another thing with home protection is there's way to put the odds in your favor. I know we do a lot of training for not just my company, but other companies out there doing a lot of training of like home clearing, like how do you clear your house by yourself? And these are all great skills to develop. And we train for the worst case scenario. So, you're always training for like, this is as bad as it could possibly be. So how do we handle it? But the reality is that's how we're training toward, but that doesn't mean that that's necessarily how we have to execute our game plan, because we want to remember that we want to put the odds in our favor. So, for example, of trying to move through your home and clear your home by yourself, if you think someone's in it, a better game plan might be to move back into a room and have designated ambush areas in your home where you can, basically set up a strategic position within your own home. There is a bad guy that's in the house, make them come to you, because it's always harder to go move forward than it is to hold your ground. So it's very simple for people to have a few of those areas in their home. They go, this is where I'm going to, lock down a position, and I'm going to defend myself. I have my firearm in that spot. And maybe you pick a spot that's in relation to your children's room, so the angle to the doorway, if someone were to come in, isn't threatening your children. And maybe you have your if it's at nighttime or something like that, maybe you have your keys or your phone in that area, so you can do little tricks like hit the panic button on your car alarm. And if there's someone in your house trying to steal stuff, they hear the car alarm going off. One, it's a distraction. Two, it makes them nervous that they're going to be caught, because no one wants to go to jail. and hopefully that makes them run away without you ever having to confront them. And if they don't know you're in the room, they have no idea where that's coming from. They have the option: am I going to search the entire house to try to find this person, to turn the car alarm off, or do I just get out of here and try to get away? So there's a lot of little tricks like that we can do to increase the odds of our survivability and winning the altercation without actually ever getting in the altercation to begin with.
Yep, that makes a ton of sense. And the other thing about, falling back and just kind of barricading in place, it gives you the opportunity to call the police because, if you can have them deal with it instead of dealing with it yourself as a citizen, that's better.
Yep. And one of those things on calling the police, if it's at nighttime, I actually had a client do this, and then afterwards they called me up and they're like, dude, I did everything wrong. Right? So they're standing in front of the window because there's someone trying to break in their house, and they go to call the police, and they kept the lights off in the house. So if at night, if you're inside the home with the lights off, it's hard for people to see in the windows, right? But once I turn the lights on, now I can't see out of the window, and all the bad guys can see in, right? So he didn't turn the lights on, but what he did is he's standing in front of the window, like looking out, like, oh man, they're like trying to get in. And then he gets on his phone to call the police, and his phone lights up. And now he's standing right in front of the window where the people looking through the window couldn't see him. Now he turns his phone on to call 911, and all of a sudden he's standing right there in front of the window, face to face with the bad guy because his phone lit up, right? So another thing just to take into consideration, if you are going to call 911, don't do it right in front of the windows. Be aware of the light that your phone's going to give off, or the sounds that your phones are going to make. Maybe put your phone on silent. Right when you hear there's something in your house or you're concerned, put your phone on silent. Maybe you can go in and turn the lights down, or when you call 911, do it like with your hands in a drawer or your hands under the bed or under the blanket, so that way it doesn't light the room up if you have a lot of windows or anything like that. Just one more thing.
Yep.
Your position as you're trying to, stealthily, call the police for help.
Yeah, that's a great call. And I think you're probably right. A lot of people don't think about the idea of suddenly being backlit.
Yep.
Excellent. So we touched on this a little bit, but there's a lot of myths and misconceptions in the firearms and defensive world. What is one of your least favorites that you would like to do as possible?
I think one of the main things as far as the combatives and the self-defense or the firearms, it kind of all goes together in that is that many times we practice different techniques and we can get caught up on really technical techniques that we think are going to win the fight. But there's something that has to be said for the use of violence. And techniques, although you can use a technique to take on a better attacker, but at the same time, I caution people on getting so tied into techniques that they don't utilize violence, because the attacker is probably going to be extremely violent. And a lot of times the person who is more violent will win. Even if you have awesome technique and you have, this, and this, the person who's more violent many times will trump your technique. And we see that a lot of times in bar brawls and bar fights. You have that one dude who can't fight worth a crap, but they're just maniacs. And then what happens is not only do they plow through some people's technique, but then they also intimidate all the other people. And if you had friends who were going to come to help, maybe they get intimidated to help because this person is just so violent and crazy, like you don't know how or what to do. So I need to be able to come into the scene being a nice person, being, not looking for trouble and all that stuff. And I have to be able to tap into and utilize violence on the drop of a dime when needed, right? And not get so caught up into utilizing the perfect techniques or training systems that have the perfect technique and all this kind of stuff. And for like example, for a while I trained Aikido, and this is nothing against Aikido, right? But after training Aikido for a few months, I realized, like, dude, if I tried to utilize this Aikido techniques on someone who really wanted to crush me, right? Like, I'm going to get my ass kicked. You know what I mean? Like, it's too technical. Now, the dudes who've been doing Aikido for like 8 to 10 years and they're freaking, masters at this and they've mastered this art, then maybe they can. But what do I do in the intern? What do I do between year 1 and 3? You know what I mean? So I like to try to have people find very simple systems, very, gross motor movement kind of defense techniques that aren't very technical for us to do. But the main thing that they have to be able to tap into above all else is the ability to, match and override our attacker's violence level. Like, so whatever level they're coming in, I have to be able to emotionally be able to rise above that and deliver with it, because otherwise I'm going to have someone who wants to, like, rip my heart out and, do horrible things to me. And I'm trying to override their violence with a few techniques, and maybe you get lucky, right? Or maybe you're able to do it. But for the most of us who aren't at that, the back half, like, expert level on whatever that martial art is, if you're on the inside, of that in the earlier stages, like, don't get caught up on so much technique as much as your ability to drive through and be extremely violent when taking on someone who is extremely violent. Because I mean, if you think of the mindset of someone who comes in and their goal is to tie up an entire family during a home invasion, and what they plan on doing is tying these people up, torturing them, raping them, and then killing them at the end. Like, the mindset that they're coming in with, like, we don't understand that. You know what I mean? And many of us can't relate to that. But I have to try to go above and beyond where they are at mentally to try to stop it. Because if I try to come in, if they're coming in at a level 8 and I try to come in at a level 3, like, I'm most likely going to lose. So that's one of the hardest things for people, especially, law-abiding citizens, good people. It's very hard for them to get over that emotional block of, not wanting to hurt anyone or anything like that. And part of that comes in with, if you're going to use a firearm or you're going to use an edged weapon or anything like that, there's always that concern of, like, well, I don't really want to do this to someone. And in these kind of situations, we have to emotionally get past that if we're going to save ourselves or our family.
Yeah, it's definitely a scary time for a lot of people.
Yeah,
it's a big hurdle for sure, but something everybody who either carries a gun or has a gun in the house for self-defense needs to strongly consider, for sure. Switching gears a little bit, you're building what looks like on the internet to be a amazing facility. Honestly, I'm not sure where it is, but talk a little bit about that. What are you building? What's the goal? When's it going to be open? All that good stuff.
Yeah, so we're building out a property here in Central Florida called Deep Woods USA, and essentially after years of traveling and doing these courses on standard designed ranges, which are usually a rectangle. A lot of the stuff that we're doing is a little bit more dynamic. We're doing stuff with vehicles. We're doing stuff with being able to engage targets in a 360-degree environment, utilizing team tactics and other things of that nature. So I wanted to basically build a training facility that would allow us to run the shooting drills and practice these skill sets the way that I think they should be executed. So we have 55 acres here in Central Florida, about an hour north of Orlando. And currently we have a 360-degree carbine and pistol range that goes anywhere from 0, obviously, out to about 110 yards within the bowl. And then we have a long-distance shooting range currently that goes out to about 850 yards. We're looking to make it go further. We're in the process of building out a canine training area, an obstacle course, and because we're actually situated, the property is surrounded by the Ocala National Forest, we're able to do a lot of, like, tracking drills or tracking training with the canines. We're able to do land get navigation, off-road terrain driving, among many other things, having the woods right there and having access to the forest. But yeah, we also, host families here for our charity, Homefront Canine Project, which does service dogs for Special Forces families and veterans. So there's a whole gambit of things that are happening out here, and it's pretty exciting. It's open now. It's a private site, so it's not open just like to general public. You have to make reservations to come out and do training here or inquire about setting up some time on the calendar. But it's open now, but it's not. We're continuing to build it out, and it just keeps getting better and better and bigger. So we're pretty excited about it.
Very cool, man. I definitely need to visit next time I'm down in Florida. It looks super exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure. So that's about all I have. Where can people find out more about you?
So if you want, you can check out fullspectrumwarrior.us. That is our website that has our online training there. You can also check out the calendar for live training events. Like if you want to come train with us in person, you can check us out on Instagram, Full Spectrum Warrior USA, and also on our YouTube channel or Facebook, Full Spectrum Warrior. Very simple. So, but yeah, check it out. And we'd love to have you come train with us. We'd love to have you train with us online. We're putting out more information weekly, or we're constantly adding to the training library, and we're bringing on more instructors, and we're offering training in our whole, Full Spectrum Warrior philosophy of, health, fitness, strength training, going into technical and tactical skill sets, firearms training, combatives. And then we have leadership and personal development also in there on the website, along with canine training. So there's a wide variety of training there, but all the training intertwines with itself because it's all on building the individual to building a well-rounded warrior, and not just, building up, non-thinking meatheads. We also have that leadership and personal development side of it, so that we're building up good, strong people who are going to do the right things for the right reasons.
Awesome, man. What a good resource. Everybody go check out Full Spectrum Warrior. And Rich, thank you so much for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate the opportunity.
Excellent. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. This has been the Tactical Walls Best Defense Podcast, Episode 2. And keep an eye out. We'll keep doing this as long as you guys keep watching. Thanks, everybody.